It's time now for Keeping It Real with Ollie Gann. Brought to you by Cuck's Farm Service on Magic 105.5 WMGH. Now, here's your host, Ollie Gann.
Most of you out there listening today at the sound of my voice, and perhaps all of you out there listening, had a biological or have had a biological mom and biological dad. Perhaps one of your parents has left you at a young age, or perhaps even both parents have left you at some point in your childhood. But you were born and got to know, at least for some time, a biological mom, biological dad. There is, although, adoption. And a lot of children get adopted each and every day. Some under quite ordinary circumstances, or where there's very little stress or pressure involved. Other situations are a lot more unique. There's a lot more involved in those stories. The special guest that I have with me here today has such a story. She will have plenty to share as far as her upbringing before she was adopted. For she was adopted at 4.5 years of age. She is currently 30 years old, but believe it or not, can recall a lot of what happened and transpired in her life before her adoption at age 4.5. Her name is Tatiana Harmer. She is originally from Moldova, the former Soviet Union. But at age 4.5, she got adopted. She went through a process that led her all the way to the state of New Jersey. We are going to be talking about her adoption and her adoption process, but I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge how immensely blessed that process was and how blessed her life has been since that time, because she will have a lot to share here on Keeping It Real today on this edition of Adopted and Blessed, Tatiana's Journey.
Turn
Okay, and this is Keeping It Real. I'm your host, Ollie G, and the song you just heard is You Lifted Me Out by Chris Tomlin. And I want to encourage you, if you want to listen to any edition of the show, as I do encourage you for week to week, get onto my website, a new website now, www.kirradio.com. That's kirradio.com. And also have a new email address on there. There's also a bunch of new things going on there as well. There's a community page that's up and hopping now, and also all kinds of new stuff regarding the show on Facebook. There are daily posts going on Facebook as well as on Twitter. So if you're big into social media, like I know probably most of you are, I encourage you to get daily info about the show as well as on the Christian life. So want to welcome you all here to Keeping It Real. And I want to welcome Tatiana Harmer, special guest on the show today, all the way originally from Moldova.
Yep.
And now you say you remember a lot of what transpired, what happened in your life prior to you leaving that area of the world. Mm-hmm. Can I ask you, how does that happen? Because I don't remember a lick of when I was 4 years old. Okay. I don't know if I really remember much of when I was 9, 10, or 11 years old. What would you say is such a contributing factor to you being able to remember so much?
I think the biggest contributing factor is that there is such a big difference between my life prior to being here in the States. So it was so different living in the orphanage, and then when I was adopted and moved to the States, it was the complete opposite. So there's like a very distinct dividing line between life A and life B.
Okay, so you're able to compartmentalize and you're able to kind of separate
Yes.
before adoption and post-adoption. Okay. When were you adopted, and how, I mentioned you're 4.5 years old, so I mentioned that you're 30 now, so what year is that?
So it was June 4th of 1992.
Okay.
And I was originally supposed to have come in January, but complications kind of occurred between that time with the adoption agency and getting me over here. So I would have been just turned 4 at that point, and that in the end I was 4.5 and came in the summer with winter clothes on instead of in the winter.
Okay. Can you recall much of that time period where there seemingly was this lull, this waiting process? What was going through your mind as a 4.5-year-old kid as you were trying to figure out what was going on?
I actually didn't know that there was the lull. My parents told me about that years later when they kind of relayed the story to me. I just was woken up one morning and was told to get dressed, and you're leaving. You're going to go to a new family. You're going to America, which I didn't know what America was.
Sure.
They lined up all of the kids in the orphanage, and myself, along with 4 other children, we said goodbye to every child lined up in the orphanage. And I don't know that I understood that it was a permanent goodbye, just that was goodbye for now. And we left, and I haven't been back since. Okay.
What would you say is or was the biggest challenge growing up, having known that you were an adopted child and having been an adopted child from Moldova in the former Soviet Union?
I think, and I know that other adopted people might relate to this, and that's your sense of identity. Where do you really belong? To whom do you really belong? And you struggle with the fact that I'm now living in this country. I've been nationalized at that point, and I'm American by legal standpoint, but I still feel like I'm Moldavian by birth, by heritage, and I struggled a lot with accepting the fact that the family I'm with was mine, despite the fact that we didn't share any blood. And, and kids can be cruel in particularly elementary years, and so I got made fun of a lot for being adopted and having a biological mother give me up, and so struggling to kind of be okay with being adopted and not feeling like it was a punishment or it was like a label or a scar that I had to kind of bear boldly, but just kind of accept it as part of who I was.
So, okay, the thing that I really am hoping that people are already getting an understanding of is that this wasn't an adoption process where you were born in Chicago and you were being adopted by a family in New Jersey, or you were born even somewhere even remotely close to the cultural characteristics that we have come to know in America, like you were born in Canada or something like that. You were born in the former Soviet Union. Now, for those people that are listening, especially even in today's social media age where people are listening to this on Facebook or on YouTube, and they don't know what the former Soviet Union really is about. Okay, they don't have any idea. Can you kind of give a quick snapshot for people what that was like?
Well,
what was life like for you as this child in the former Soviet Union? Parents are giving you up. Things are not, like I said, this is not Disneyland, okay? So what's going on?
Well, as an orphan, particularly in the Soviet Union or poor countries, you're a burden to the province, or your award of, I guess, would be like the state, so to speak. And so you grow up realizing that you're basically unwanted. And when they no longer want to care for you, they kick you out, and you're basically left to just fend for yourself. And you learn really early that the world owes you nothing, the world's going to give you nothing, and if you're going to make anything of yourself, you're going to have to just figure it out on your own. And with it being such a poor country, no extras were given.
Right.
I got 3 meals a day, and I had basic clothes on my back, but there were no extra amenities or things that we're used to here in the States. That was not anything that we didn't experience, and we didn't expect it either.
Okay. Well, I can almost assure all of you out there listening that is just not even an appetizer. That's not even the taste of an appetizer of what's to come with all that Tatiana has to share. So I want to encourage you to keep it here to Magic 105.5 WMGH, as well as KIR Radio, if you're listening on the YouTube channel or the uploaded link on Facebook. So I want to encourage you to keep it here and listen to the rest of this show, the duration of the show, with Tatiana's journey, this part known as Adopted and Blessed.
Fell for your first day that I met you. Never dreamed that I ever could forget you. But black and white make a mess when it turned to gray. Across the window, rewind to the time when we were so close. It got me longing for yesterday. Hey. But Lord, you know me so well. I can be a little punk sometimes, but don't leave me alone. Bust down the door to my heart like it's your home. Don't need no keys, I'm on my knees begging you, please.
Yep, I had you in my heart, but I guess I relapsed. Like I'm living for the wrong reasons, through the seasons. Trying to fall for you, but then they put me on blast. It's like I try to speak my mind because I know that I'm his. And yep, I try to speak my mind, but it don't fly with them kids. Man, if I'm not talking about the newest Nikes or releases, they put the mute on me. I can't speak about my Jesus like I'm living for him. I'm slipping this in, I turn around and make the amends. I try to fit in, I mess it up and stumble again. I'm taking this pen and writing everything so I remember just how sweet that it is. Yeah, man, I got issues, I can't even lie. My only saving grace is knowing I got you inside. I'm done with saving face, I don't got a thing to hide. So don't leave me alone, keep coming day and night.
Don't leave me alone. Bust down the door of my heart, Lord, it's your home. You don't need no keys, I'm on my knees, begging you please. I gotta settle this thing once and for all. You got my heart, my soul, you can have it all. I'm on my knees, begging you please, Lord. I'm on my knees, begging you please, Lord. Don't leave me alone. Don't leave me alone.
Okay, and this is Keeping It Real, and the song you just heard is called Alone by Holland. Holland, a former guest here on Keeping It Real, and I love that song. That song picked by Tatiana, who's on with us on the show here today, as she's talking specifically about her adoption. This show called Adopted and Blessed. What's unfortunate is so many kids, I think, that are a part of the adoption process, there's so many labels, I think, out there, or people stigmatize things, and I don't think I think adoption is certainly, it applies to that as well.
Yeah.
What do you think are some of the misunderstandings regarding adoption in general out there?
I think for people who aren't adopted, I don't think they really understand the emotional and mental process that an adoptee goes through. I think they just think it happens and you accept it and you move on with life and that's it. And that's the end of the story. And really there's a lot of growing and understanding that has to come on the part of the family that's adopted and also the individual that's been adopted. And it's, you know, for some people it might be easier than others. And for others like myself, it was definitely a more complicated, difficult journey, acceptance, realization of, you know, it wasn't something that I did wrong, that my biological mother gave me up. And as much as there were moments that I hated being adopted and hated the fact that that was my quote-unquote label, it's now at 30 years old, I can see that it has been an immense blessing. And the opportunities that I have had in this part of my life would never have happened if I had not been adopted. If I'd remained in the orphanage till I was 18, if I had ended up on the streets with no money, no education, and really no prospects for survival at that point.
Totally different. I mean,
absolutely.
You talk about two opposite ends of the spectrum, right?
Yeah.
Do you remember anything about when you were in Moldova and at the time of your adoption? What were you thinking as you were leaving the orphanage and going to a place unknown? Because you mentioned you remember a lot of this stuff, again, which is so striking to me because I barely remember what I did yesterday, let alone what I did at 4. You remember a lot of this stuff. You talk about how there are the imagery is vivid to you. What do you remember?
Well, I wish I could say I remember happy times, but unfortunately that isn't the case. And so I do remember a lot of abuse that came with being in the orphanage, and that is unfortunately a reality. Foster care, orphanages, the people who care for you have no responsibility to you other than to feed you and clothe you.
Okay.
And
so when you say abuse,
I
physical,
I mean everything.
Everything. Okay.
Yeah, nothing was spared. And so I remember it basically was a time of survival. You did what you had to do to not get beat, to not get locked in a closet, to not get denied your dinner that day. And so you learn to bite your lip, don't cry, try not to tick anybody off. And so that unfortunately is the majority of what I remember. I'm sure there were happier times, particularly with my fellow orphans, but that's not unfortunately what I remember. when I left, or when I was told that I was leaving, I just remember thinking, okay, I'm just going to do what I'm told. Got myself dressed, lined up, said goodbye, and I didn't really know what to expect other than I was leaving the only family I'd ever known for a new family that apparently wanted me. And so I just accepted that as my reality and went with it.
Okay. You know, you share some very powerful things there that probably are pretty foreign to a lot of people that are listening. It's not to say that abuse is not going on. Abuse is going on all over the place.
Oh, yeah.
But to having gone through it with the frequency and to the degree that you went through it, I'm going to probably say is pretty foreign in American culture. We hear whacked out stories all the time. I mean, there's all kinds of, you know, you hear something, you know, you come across something on the internet, or you hear something that somebody posted or whatever, or there's news gets out about something and you're like, you got to be kidding me.
Yeah.
You know, there's stuff flying around out there, right? And there's always like, it's definitely happening. But again, for those people that are 30, 35 years old and older, they can recall what the former Soviet Union was like. Like I said, if there was a polar opposite to Disney World, this is one of these places,
Oh,
right?
absolutely. Yeah.
So when you mention that there is abuse going on, and you went, and that's why I asked you, you know,
Yeah.
all of it, you confirmed all of it. This wasn't even, I don't want people to misunderstand me. All abuse is bad. It's to be taken seriously. It is tragic. It's all of those things. But the abuse that you went through, that's a whole nother realm, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that's why I say I think that probably most of the people listening, in fact, maybe all the people listening, cannot quite compute what that was like for you. And the fact that you're sitting here at age 30 now, full-grown adult, and you can remember this stuff. No wonder why you can remember it,
Yeah.
right? Because
yeah, exactly.
this wasn't just, you know, some sort of, again, not to minimize any abuse, but it wasn't like a kid just got a bruise from getting hit too hard by their parent. You got abuse like no one can believe. Do you think, now looking back on it as a 30-year-old, looking back at that time, do you attribute God's hand being at work even in the midst of that time? Even you're in the middle of that seriously dark place. How can you testify or give a testimonial of how you can look back in retrospect and know, yep, God was at work right there?
I'll be honest with you, it's taken me a long time to acknowledge that God was in that work. When I got old enough to really come to terms with and digest really the severity and the complexity of the abuse that I endured and the different types, it took me for a hit, and it really did affect my faith and my walk with Christ at that time, because I was angry and I was hurt, and I was like, how could, you know, this God that I believed in, who, you know, says he loves me, allow something that horrible to happen to a child, to anybody really, but
Right.
you know, to a child who can't defend themselves. You really don't have a choice. And if they really wanted to, they could have killed me and no one would have thought anything about it. Nobody knew really where I was. I was just there. And so looking back now, I can see that God uses even those dark moments in my life. It shaped who I am as an adult. It's helped me in how I perspective on different things in life, ability to be empathetic, compassionate. It's allowed me to share my story and realize that, yes, while it was terrible that it happened, God uses those things to also bring glory to himself. And that was a long time, again, coming to that realization. That's really not about me in the end. As a believer, as a Christian woman, I realized that God uses those things to bring glory to him. And if I can share it and say that I understand that, then I can show that I'm not angry and I'm not bitter and I'm not trapped by that, and that God did redeem and did restore me and he did heal me, and that through it all, that's the whole story of salvation, is redemption and healing. And so Yes, his hand has been in that from the time I was born to right now. And it's really how I can share it and present it that, shows where he's gone with that.
Amazing testimonial. Would you say that then really, the indisputable fact of how God has been at work in your life is how God has used all of that as a framework?
Absolutely.
For where he has brought you to today.
Yes.
You wouldn't be half the woman you are if God didn't use that darkest of dark places to build a framework for what he has had in store for you.
Absolutely.
All of you out there listening, let that be an encouragement to you. No matter how dark or how grave you think life has been for you or where you find yourself today, if Tatiana's story means anything, it offers so much hope. Mm-hmm. Because if God can, she used the word redeem or redemption, if God can redeem her out of the darkest of dark places in a place known as Moldova, the former Soviet Union, where the mistreatments that she got go way beyond, I think, almost any of our human comprehensions. Wherever you find yourself, wherever I find myself, we can be encouraged from your story. Mm-hmm. I want to encourage you all to keep it locked in here to Magic 105.5 WMGH, as we've got a lot more with Tatiana. We're going to play a song now by Need to Breathe called Hard Love, another song that she has picked. Real quickly, why did you pick this song?
I think it hit home for me that love isn't always just feeling an emotion. It is an action, it is a choice, and sometimes it doesn't always feel great, but love can be, that tough love can be shown, whether it's through a family member, a friend, or even with God, that tough love that picks you up and says, keep going.
Well, and there's been a lot of toughness in your life, as you've already shared. It's definitely added some real fiber and some steel to your character. Here is Hard Love by Need to Breathe.
Trading punches with the heart of darkness, going to blows with your fear incarnate. You're never going till it's stripped away, but part of you has gotta die to change. In the morning you gon' need an answer, ain't nobody gonna change the standard. It's not enough to just feel the flame, you gotta burn your old self away. Hold on tight a little longer, what don't kill you make you stronger. Get back up, 'cause it's a hard love. You can't change without a fallout. It's gonna hurt, but don't you slow down. Get back up, 'cause it's a hard love.
You know the situation can't be right, and all you ever do is fight. But there's a reason that the road is long. It takes some time to make your courage strong.
Hold on tight a little longer, what don't kill you make you stronger. Get back up, 'cause it's a hard love. You can't change without a fallout. It's gonna hurt, but don't you slow down. Get back up, 'cause it's a hard love. When the wolves come and hunt me down, I will face them all and stand my ground. 'Cause there's a fire burning deep, they will see my strength in this love I've found. Whoa, hold on tight a little longer, what don't kill you make you stronger. Get back up, 'cause it's a hard love. You can't change without a fallout.
Father God, have your way. You are in control. This day is a gift that you gave. We believe when you say you are in control.
You know every moment, every dream, everything concerning me, and oh, you are in control, never letting go. And what can keep your love away from me? You are in control. The universe is yours, and by your word you hold it all together.
We stand by the power of your hand. We believe in your plan. You are in control.
You know every moment, every dream, everything concerning me, and every promise, every word, all is working for my good. And oh, you are in control, never letting go. And what can keep your love away from me? You are in control. The universe is yours, and by your word you hold it all together. You hold it all together.
Hold it all together. Oh, you're in control. You hold my life.
Oh, when you hold my world,
All my days are in your hands. Oh, you're in control. You hold it all together. You hold it all together. You hold it all. You hold it all together. Say all of my dreams, yeah. You hold all of my plans, yeah. You hold all of my days up in your hands. Lord, you're in control.
Okay, and that was Seth and Nerva with You Are in Control. And we are back here on Keeping It Real with Tatiana Harmer, who's been my guest on the show today. She's already shared so much regarding her life, specifically as it ties into her being an adopted child from Moldova, from the former Soviet Union, and rough place, rough experiences that you had that you can, I would say, quite clearly recall back at that young age. If this has been kind of a morbid kind of a show, I do want to apologize for folks. There's always good news. I mean, this show is really saturated with good news, but we also at the same time got to keep it real, because before good comes about, there was perceived negativity, or there was darkness, or there was difficulties, there was hardships, and you certainly had your fair share. Now, let's transition to some of the joys, shall we? What was life like? That is, so many of the joys, having been physically adopted by your adopted parents, living in New Jersey, and then being spiritually adopted into God's family at age 7, I believe that happened for you, right? Okay.
Well, obviously, it was a complete opposite of what I experienced prior to being there. I was adopted and warmly accepted and loved by parents who opened up their hearts to me. They didn't have to do that, and they chose to. They have supported and loved me since I've been here, even before they met me. My parents say that they fell in love when they were first introduced to my picture and my little bio in the adoption pamphlet. And just being encouraged to go for different experiences in life, trying different sports, which I'm not really, eye-hand coordination isn't my strong suit. But my parents, if I wanted to try it, my parents said, go for it. What do you have to lose?
So they were very supportive.
Absolutely, very supportive. They were supportive in my failed sports attempts. They were supportive in a lot of my music, which is a big part of my life. They've been supportive educationally. I love school, so that's something that has been, again, a big part of my life. Undergraduate degree, I'm on my way to getting my master's in speech and language pathology, and my parents said, if you really want to do that, go for it. So just that.
You've been like a professional student.
Yes. If I could get paid to go to classes, I think that would have been the job I would have chosen to do. But I'm done paying for school for a while. But just that unconditional love, that true support has been amazing. And I can't imagine what my life would have been like without that. And so I am so thankful. And those dark moments before, as hard as they are, have been not erased, because obviously that memory is there, but
Right.
the pain has been lessened because I've been able to experience the good as well. As for the spiritual adoption, when I was 7, I asked my parents, I said, I want Jesus to come into my heart. And my parents knelt beside me in my bed. And I remember that too, that night, knelt beside me, one on each side, and they prayed for me. And I remember thinking, God loves me too, and this is good. And I felt very secure in that love and that childlike faith that, you accept it because you truly believe it. I can't honestly say that it's always been like that from 7 to 30. Life happens.
Right.
And experiences happen, and particularly with coming to understand, like I mentioned earlier, with the abuse and how that affected me emotionally, mentally, and even spiritually, it took kind of a re-evaluation in my faith to kind of figure out, where God was in all of that, and still finding the joy despite that pain.
Pretty loaded
Yeah.
answer, and I wouldn't have expected really otherwise, because it was a pretty loaded question too. Do you think that people have been able to relate to you fairly easily, especially once you share at least some of those details with people? Because you mentioned, like, you've been around to a number of different places, right? You grew up in New Jersey, but then you went to college, and then you went to get your master's, and so you've bounced around from one school to another school, which means a new set of friends, and then another new group of people that you've connected with, and you've gotten to know probably quite a few people in each of those arenas that you've been in.
Yeah.
Would you say people have been able to, generally speaking, been able to connect with you fairly easily, especially after you share some of these details in your life? Or do people kind of look at you and go, you know what, I'm kind of weirded out by this a little bit because I'm not accustomed to hearing stories like this, and so they kind of stay maybe distant where it's safer for them? How do people react to your story?
They do not remain distant, I'll tell you that much. When I open up and I share, people seem to be really fascinated and intrigued by that. One, because I am willing to talk about it, and most people feel like, oh my goodness, I can't believe that you're okay with sharing that, and you're brave to come out and be that vulnerable and transparent. And in some ways, I think it helps them realize, okay, everybody does go through different aspects and experiences of life, and what might be one person's darkest moment may not be another person's darkest moment.
Right.
But we all go through those times in our periods where in our life where we have hit that rock bottom, or we have struggled with our faith, or we are not really sure where we stand with God. And when someone can be open and real about that, it kind of puts it into perspective, like, oh, I don't have to put on this show of I have it all together. And for me, that's the reason why I do share it. I don't have to pretend like I have it all together. Yes, I'm a Christian. Yes, I've been a Christian for a long time. Do I always have it together? Absolutely not. And does God have to remind me daily that He's in control and that He's got this? And yes, things might seem like they're scary, but I'm okay that is a daily reminder, because I am someone that struggles to fight for that control, because that's something that was not something I was given early on.
Yeah.
My life was utter chaos and out of control. And then having to surrender that to God and say, okay, I trust that that control is a safe thing to give away. Yeah.
That's so cool. And when were you starting to feel, how old were you when you started to feel really comfortable sharing your story like this with people?
Not that long ago, probably 25.
Okay, so within the last 5 years or so here.
So it was about two decades before I really felt comfortable sharing.
So definitely through your teen years and whatever, you were pretty reserved
I hit
about
the
this.
surface area of it, but I
Yeah.
never really delved into the deeper, darker aspects of it. And I think for a lot of it too, I was trying to comprehend and compartmentalize and deal with it on my own. And I don't think I really even knew how to relay that to anybody, nor did I think anybody was really going to understand. And I think part of it was just that I wasn't ready to share it.
And that's okay, because that's all part of the process.
Yeah.
What would you say to people that believe they've had roads too tough to travel, and therefore they don't believe in Christ or in a God who loves them so much, taking into account your story, your life, what you've shared? Because I run into this all the time, and I hear people, or I hear of people, they feel like that they're just too many people, or life is out to get them too much. They are paddling upstream too much. They can't even imagine, if they do choose to believe in God, they can't even imagine what his love would be like, because they feel like their road is too rough. What would you say to those folks?
I get it. I absolutely get it. And I understand what you're experiencing. And it's normal. It is natural to kind of wonder where you belong, where you set. What does that road actually mean for you? And I know that no one wants to hear that Sunday school answer that God loves you and it's all going to be okay. But truth is...
And this is keeping it real.
It is keeping it real.
We do not... We are not like that here.
No. And it is... God didn't say that you're not allowed to ever doubt or question or be angry or be hurt. That's not, he's not the God that says, you have to be happy all the time and it's sunshine and roses, because it's not.
Right.
But I can say that even despite those dark moments, I have seen God's hand in everything. And you may not see it in the moment. You may not see it 10 years from that moment. But I can promise you that you've not been forgotten. You've not been abandoned. God does love you, even though you're not sure how to accept that love. And it's not human love. And so you're not going to be able to fully comprehend it. It is this supernatural love that we're going to spend the rest of our lives here on earth trying to figure it out. But if you open yourself up to it, if you open yourself up to other people and seek that help, you'd be amazed to see how God can use those moments to really just work a redemption and a healing in your life.
Wow. And I tell you what, so basically what you're saying is, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, you've experienced it.
Absolutely.
Trust the experience.
Yes.
All of you out there listening, would you just trust, not in Tatiana and what she has had to say, or just how she has been able to proclaim it or declare it here today on Keeping It Real, but to trust Christ, give him a shot, give him a chance, and that the experience can be real for you too. Other guests that we've had on the air here, it's like that too. And certainly for me as the host, it's been like that. It's been an experience. And we've all got different parts to that experience, but the common denominator is that Christ is for real.
Absolutely.
And that's what we're about here on Keeping It Real. We're going to play a song called Here by Carrie Job, a song you picked. What does this song mean to you?
It's very prayerful, and that's what I love about Carrie Job, is that she just speaks from the heart. And it was just that quiet, reflective, all right, I'm here, Lord, you're here, Lord, and just, embracing that quiet time and letting God speak to your heart. And I just think that we get so distracted by the noise of life, and that song just kind of asks you to still your heart and just be in the presence of the Lord.
And Carrie Job, also one of the artists at Winter Jam this year. And
She's wonderful.
Yeah, she is. She is got such a great heart. Actually, quite witty and quite funny too.
Yeah.
If you get a chance to listen to her beyond her music. But here is Here by Carrie Job. Please don't go anywhere because we've still got more with Tatiana Harmer here to come on the show today.
Come and rest here. Come and lay your burdens down.
today, and this is Keeping It Real. We're going to make the show a wrap here with Tatiana Harmer, but do not be discouraged, because if you want to hear more from her, we're going to have another whole show with her. This is just the adoption portion of her life. We've called the show Adopted and Blessed. Next week, we're going to have more on her journey, talking about her personal plans. That is post-adoption, and really getting more into the present time of where she's at and where she believes maybe where the Lord is taking her to. But for today, it's been about her adoption, which has been filled with so much. And I encourage all of you to get on to KIRradio.com if you've missed any part of this show, and get on to my YouTube channel from there, and you can get on to this edition of the show and listen to her story, because it's been amazing and impactful for me, even as I've interviewed you and gotten to know you. It's really a unique story. It's not something that is, I think, easy to the ear, because I don't think it's heard very often by most folks. So thank you for being so free and willing to share, not just about your adoption in general, but really a lot of the specific parts of it. Some things that I think a lot of people might even think it to be very difficult for one to share. But you've been very willing and been really stand up
thank you for having me.
To sharing. What do you think is the most blessed aspect of your adoption?
I think the most blessed aspect of my adoption is the adoption.
Okay.
That is my story. It is God's tool in revealing his purpose for my life and his glory through my life. And that's a tool. I'm a tool of his glory and his purpose. And so I get to share about my adoption, and I get to share about those experiences. And so it's not necessarily a before or an after, but just the fact that that is the central theme of my life.
This is your story.
Is my story.
Yeah.
And it's really God's
it's your
story.
Journey. Yeah.
And his, my testimony is proof to, his work in my life.
It's interesting that you put it that way, because I think there is a general sense where people are always looking to compare themselves with others, or they wish they had what someone else had, or they wish they had the financial standing that someone else has, or they wish that they had a certain figure or physique that someone else has. People, you see it all over the place, whether if it's in magazine publications or in periodicals or articles or just with the media in general or social media. It's flying around all over the place out there. And people are always looking to be someone else or be like someone else or wish that they can measure up to someone else.
Yeah.
The thing that we've gotten from your story today is you've never wanted to be anybody else. This is your story, and you are darn proud of it. Not proud of it in a bad way, like a sinful way, like the Bible condemns the sin of pride, but proud of it because this is the story that God's written for you. And why would you want anything else? Very touching, very moving. Thank you again. We look forward to you coming back into this very studio next week. As Tatiana will share more of her story. This is all part of Tatiana's Journey, is the subtitle for this 2-part series that we've got her with. We're going to close out the show with Unfinished by Mandisa. I saw Mandisa in concert last year. Love her to death. Why do you pick this song to close out the show today?
I think for me, it's how I feel the central theme of my life is. I have been a believer since I was 7, but God is still working on me day in and day out, and that's okay. And I don't have to be perfect, and I don't have to put on a show like I have it all together. God is still working on me, and that is something that I can embrace and be grateful and thankful for.
Yeah, well put. And that's also the way how Mandisa more or less paraphrases that song as well, where she testifies of the origination of that song. And she talks about how she had that big hit song, Overcomer. She was preaching it, but then she really fell on some hard times. And you think, how could a spiritual giant, quote unquote spiritual giant, fall on hard times? Well, she did. But yet it was proof that she's unfinished and that God's still working her over and God's working in her life. It now holds true for you as well. Definitely holds true for me. Anybody that's transparent and humble enough, I think, would be able to
admit that as
admit
well.
that. Yeah. So here's Unfinished by Mandisa. Tatiana, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Look forward to it again next week. And looking forward to all of you out there listening again next week. Tune it in here to Magic 105.5 WMGH and also to KIR Radio. God bless you all real good.
Not scared to say I used to be the one preaching it to you that you could overcome. I still believe it, but it ain't easy. 'Cause that world I painted, where things just don't work out, it started changing, and I started having doubts, and it got me so down. But I picked myself back up, and I started telling me, no, my God's not done making me a masterpiece. He's still working on me. He started something good, and I'm gonna believe it. He started something good, and he's gonna complete it. So I celebrate the truth. He's working me through. I'm just unfinished. I'm just unfinished. So I celebrate the truth. He's working me through. I'm just unfinished. I know his history and the kind of God he is. He might make it a mystery, but he's proven I can trust in him. And yeah, I believe it. So I can pick myself back up and keep on telling me, no, my God's not done making me a masterpiece. No, my God's not done. He started something good, and I'm gonna believe it. He started something good, and he's gonna complete it. So I celebrate the truth. He's working me through. I'm just unfinished. Yeah, I'm just unfinished. So I celebrate the truth. He's working me through. No, still working, still working on me. He's still working, still working on me. Oh, he started something good, and I'm gonna believe it. He started something good, and he's gonna complete it. So I celebrate the truth. He's working me through. I'm just unfinished. I'm just unfinished. So I celebrate the truth. He's working me through. I'm just unfinished. Still working on me. He's still working, still working on me. Oh yeah, I'm just unfinished.
You've been listening to Keeping It Real, hosted by Ollie Gann. Keeping It Real is brought to you by Cuck's Farm Service. Join Ollie G Sunday mornings 8:30 to 9:30 right here on Magic 105.5 WMGH.